right, y'all, we're ready to get started with our leadership breakfast today with the new APS Superintendent, Dr. Bryan Johnson. So you want to kick it off?
Sure, yeah. Thank you for being here. Give yourselves a round of applause for being here this morning. This is a really exciting conversation. We have interviewed the last few superintendents. So we've had the last 3 superintendents over a very short period of time. So there's no question that this is a conversation that not only it makes a lot of sense for this community to be having, but it is one that is necessary for us to have because we have a lot of interesting information over the course of the past decade on what is happening in our school system and what our leadership is saying they want to do about it and what they are actually able to execute up against. The Leadership Breakfast series is actually something we started within our first week of existing as an organization. And I'm really proud to say this is our 10-year later mark. This is our first Leadership Breakfast after our 10-year mark. So that's exciting. But for 10 years, we have been having conversations with folks who represent this city, who make decisions on behalf of on behalf of families, on behalf of communities, on behalf of children in our city. And the goal of this is to really get to know who they are and what they stand for and what they believe. So the format for this is for us to just be able to get to know a little bit more about Dr. Johnson, about who he is, why this work matters to him, and then we'll get into some nitty-gritty about his work at APS and his vision for this school system as well. We will also then open it up for questions, and questions end with question marks. So want to make sure that we are able to get as many of those as possible. I believe we have comment cards and other things. Like if you feel like you got to run out or something else is going on, feel free to write on that comment card. If you have a follow-up question, we'll make sure it gets to Dr. Johnson as well. This work is super important because at the end of the day, there are a lot of decisions that are being made that are fundamentally shifting this city. That's why this organization exists. So feel free to tell this conversation, if it just stays here, then we have not done our job. So take notes, send it out. We got a lot of teachers in the room, I see, so a lot of pens and paper already out. But please share this with your community and let them know why this is such an important conversation. We're online at Civic Atlanta, so feel free to share throughout the conversation. But with that, I will get us kicked off and started. And everyone checked their voter registration last night? Yes? I don't have to do that? Okay. Early voting starts on? Okay, great. A civically engaged group is a great group. I know I'm in good company. October 15th, so just make sure you're making a plan for early voting as well. We have not only a presidential, but also a city council race as well, which I'll talk about again at the end. But with that, I'm excited to get started with you. Dr. Johnson had a long evening, early morning, so we're so grateful that you're here with us today. I'm gonna kick off this conversation the same way I've been kicking this off for 10 years, which is to ask you the question of why public service? Where does that come from for you? Why is that important? Like who inspires public service for you?
Yeah, well, first off, thank y'all for coming out this morning. Appreciate you all putting this on and giving us an opportunity to engage in this way. So for me, it's pretty straightforward. I come from parents of public service. So my father was one of 9 children, single mother, and by most accounts, he would be the most successful of that 9. He was a bivocational, part-time pastor, part-time mechanic, and I always tell people, you put those 2 things together, it really means you got a lot of free break jobs that were going on in our driveway at home, and so just a solid, just a good man, right? And was and has been even still really the anchor for his family, his siblings, and even their children, to as kind of the cornerstone, so to speak, of the family, as others have passed on. So just always service-centric, whether it been his congregation, which was a smaller congregation, but one that he served exceptionally well, or our family, obviously, immediately, and the family of others. And my mother was one of two children, and her father passed at an early age. She went on to be one of the early entrants at the University of South Carolina, and for her, going to school at a time when getting a college degree wasn't something that Black and brown folks had just easy access to. As I was coming up and through, they were pretty unapologetic about this reality that I was going to get all the education that I could absolutely stand.
Yep.
And I was extremely appreciative of that. My mother, I would put an additional note there. My mother served as a social worker for the majority of her professional career. And then at, I guess about the time I was coming out of middle school, my father's mother developed Alzheimer's and moved in with us, and she cared for her until she passed a couple years later. And then right after that, her mother moved in with us. She developed Alzheimer's as well. And at that point, my mother had to go back to work kind of part-time just to help the family move forward. And so I've shared, not overly frequently, but I've shared multiple times that for me, one of the best experiences that I had was to have my mother's mother in the house at probably 13, 14, 15 years old in that time frame, having a younger sister who was about 4 years younger than me, and oftentimes having to, not oftentimes, regularly, in particular during the summer months, having to wake up and get my mother's mother up, cook breakfast, get her going, because my mom and dad had to go to work. And I don't have a long answer here, but I think the context matters. And,
Yep.
And oftentimes having to make decisions that as a 14 or 15-year-old kid, you don't expect yourself to have to make. Like, for instance, at 9 o'clock in the morning, if my grandmother had an accident on herself, I would have to lean in and make a decision. Do I leave her in this situation until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon when my mom or dad gets home, or do I address it? And so when I think about how that translates for me, although I had a 2-parent household, I had to make some really tough decisions early on and got some exposures that I'm really appreciative of.
Where did you grow up?
Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, Nashville, Tennessee. Is that where your family was before that as well? They've been there for generations, or?
Yeah, my father. So my mother's from Charleston,
Okay.
South Carolina. She was born and raised in Charleston, and my father was born and raised in Nashville. Okay. They relocated to Nashville.
Okay.
So,
and do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister who's younger than me.
Okay.
She's the spoiled baby.
Got it. So you're an older brother.
And then I have an older brother.
You have you're the middle child.
I'm the middle child.
Okay.
I got nothing,
I love how you led with, I have a younger sister.
Yeah, well, she's
just to show you have, yeah.
I know my order.
Okay, yeah.
My brother and I, we give my dad a hard time. So I can get into that another day. But she gets everything.
Okay, everything.
That's a whole other story.
Right. No, let's lean into this because
this is therapeutic.
I can empathize with this, right? It's these little sisters who.
She gets everything.
Yeah. So what's your age difference between you and your
4
sister?
years. 4
Okay.
years, yes.
And how about for you and your brother?
So we're 12 years different.
12 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So do you think your brother was more of a second or a third parent, or?
Absolutely. So my brother was tremendous. I mean, like he wasn't, for a good portion of my life, he wasn't in the house. And so, he spent a lot of Saturdays with me at the YMCA and, different places, just spending time. So he definitely was a mentor from that standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how would your younger sister describe you? What would she say? Oh, you're interviewing my brother.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I think she'd say I'm a good man. I think.
Is that how younger sisters describe
I hope,
their middle brothers?
Yeah. I think she would. I mean, right now I'm free, a free hotel. She's in Atlanta, quite a bit. So she's kind of got her own. She's entrepreneurial. She worked for Pfizer Pharmaceutical. She was in corporate America for a long time, and then she kind of transitioned and branched out on her own. And so she's in and out of Atlanta a decent amount, and so she's so excited that we're here. She doesn't have to get a hotel room.
I bet.
So,
Okay.
like at 10 o'clock one night, I'm sitting in, I hear the doorbell ring, and I'm my wife like, "Who's at the door?" She's like, "Oh, it's your sister. She texted me and told me she was on the way."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Got it.
So, yeah.
I have never had someone so stereotypically be a middle child in this interview. So this is good. I hear that. So for you, you're growing up in Tennessee. Did you know very explicitly that you were in the South? Was that your accent suggests that you can't run away from it, right? But
we lean in,
so it is. But did you feel proud that you were from the South? Did you know you were from? Was that an identity that was important to you at all, or?
I don't know if the South as much as, and I don't know. I guess you go multiple places with that. I'd have to ask you a question. Like, what do you mean? Did I know I was from the South?
Well, I'm saying, like, where did your identity really fall? Where did you feel like I'm from the South, or I'm from Tennessee, or it's just my neighborhood? I just happen to be in Tennessee. What geographic indicator is most important to your identity?
I don't know the geography was ever overly important. So faith was important to me. My father was it is important to me. My father was a pastor. I spent a lot of time at church.
Okay.
And so that was an obvious indicator. I knew that I was a black man coming up in America, right? And that for me, representation mattered, and so I was always extremely sensitive to the sacrifices that my parents made, so that I could be sitting here, right?
Yeah.
I think that's extremely important.
Yeah.
And so, geography really doesn't come into play as much. I think I obviously have experienced some of the tensions that exist. Being from the South, Nashville's a little more progressive than some places. I've had the privilege of being in a couple of spaces in Tennessee, a few spaces in Tennessee, and definitely can tell you there's certain communities and cities that are different, in their approach. But Nashville's a little more progressive.
How about for the neighborhood that you were in? Were you around other black families, or was this, or was it a mixed community? What was your upbringing?
Yeah, so actually, I didn't actually go to school, to my quote unquote zone school. So my parents sent me to. Nashville, like many areas, has gone through this metamorphosis, and communities have gentrified and changed and shifted. And at the time that I came up, like my middle school experience was at a school called Carter Lawrence.
Okay.
And so again, as I shared, my mother and father had to work. My aunt lived in the housing projects that were 12 South, and what now is known as 12 South. Back then it was Edge Hill, and so the Edge Hill housing projects is where she lived. And after school, I would go to the Edge Hill housing projects because that was my aftercare. And so then my dad would come through and pick me up, and my mother would come through and pick me up. And so I ended up kind of, life has changed so much. You end up kind of going to school where your support network is. And so I could go to school in kind of where we lived, which was a more mixed area, or I go to school where aftercare was. And so where aftercare was that's where aftercare was.
Okay.
And so.
That's a reality for so many family, or a decision that folks are making is where's my kid going to go to school? Am I okay with the place that, in the neighborhood that we already live in?
Absolutely.
It sounds like your parents made a choice, right? To say,
100%.
We don't want him necessarily going to this school.
And she was, and so for me, the decision was based on family, a tremendous, caregiver, she was, and somebody they could trust to, do what's right. So the location didn't matter as much as it did, making sure there was that support system.
Okay. And so for you as a kid, like, did you feel like I want to stay in Tennessee forever? Was that something you envisioned for yourself?
I don't think I thought that far necessarily. as I've evolved, I want to be where the good work is. So we're excited to be in Atlanta. I will say that. We enjoyed our time in Tennessee, and it was always a good place. But there never was this, man, I'm gonna be here for the rest of my life. Kind of approach. I don't think.
Do you still have family in Tennessee?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Most of my family's in Nashville.
Well, they're all going to come move in with you soon, so I hope your house is big enough to
we don't
accommodate.
Have that kind of
space, yeah.
My sister's already claimed like a portion. And, And so my wife is from Clarksville, Tennessee, which is about 45 minutes northwest of Nashville, and so our family is there. Then I've got my mother's side of the family. Most of them are still in Charleston.
Yeah. Did you? Where'd you go to school? What happened after high school for you?
Yeah. So I went to a school called Austin Peay, which is in Clarksville, which is how I met my wife, and so. I played college football there, and
did you play football in high school too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, I guess you can't not play
I
in high school.
Can,
that'd be weird. That would be amazing. That'd be a Disney story.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of made the.
What position did you play?
I played linebacker.
Okay. All right. So you know how to give some hits. That's good.
And absolutely. I like giving hits versus taking hits. But you sign up for a job when you take a lot of hits. So, I got it back.
That's right. Okay. So you were a linebacker. Were you like, I'm going pro? Like this is.
No, so I was okay. So so I started as a freshman at Austin Peay, and then I started as a sophomore, and then. About my junior year, I tore my ACL about the second game of the season, and it was a blessing in disguise kind of deal, because I was like, I better lock in and do some schoolwork. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, not that I've been doing enough. You know what I mean? But I was like, okay, this degree is going to actually matter.
Yeah.
And so my affinity with football, I felt like when I had a major injury, you have to sit out the entire year. You're I won't say my love for the game left, but my perspective around the game shifted.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
who if you were to be in the NFL,
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I might be in Atlanta, but I wouldn't be sitting right here.
Yeah. I feel like I'm going through past aspirations with you. This is nice. So there's what if you were to be a linebacker in the NFL? What quarterback would you want to hit?
Okay, thank you for not saying what team.
Yeah, because it's the Falcons should be the answer. I won't put you on the spot like that. Were you like an Oilers fan? Is that what happened? Like, were you Titans?
I'm gonna go with the question that you posed.
Okay. Well, great. Now I have a follow-up. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm deeply trained in communication. So
absolutely.
However,
I'm catching that. Yeah.
So your original question.
My original question was, what quarterback would you want to hit as a linebacker?
That's a tough question. I don't know that I ever lined up really want to hit. It's quarterbacks are always so protected. I think I would probably I'd want to hit Tom Brady.
Yeah.
For my era, right?
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the era. I want to hit the Joe Montana, you know what I mean? You want to hit the John Elway. I want to hit that guy.
Yeah.
Because you can replay that over and over in grandkids.
Yeah.
I
hear that.
That's a deal.
Yeah, like that. Look at him tapping me on the helmet, saying "good hit." That's good.
Yeah.
So you're in college.
I did that, right?
Yeah, I saw it.
And I moved you right on past the next question.
Well, this tells me you haven't watched my past interviews either, so that's okay. I don't know anything about you either, so it's all good. We're getting to know each other. It's all good. Yeah, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. That's what you don't know. I'll figure out a way to get it in. But I do want to figure out. So you're in college. Your dream of the NFL to play for one of those teams is not necessarily right there. So what happens? Like what did you change course while you were in school, or did you stay course? What was?
Yeah. So the good thing. So I was telling somebody, I forget I was talking to coming in. I think it's important for children to have a hook.
Yeah.
And so because and when I say a hook, like something they're really passionate about, let me just say this. Some kids are really passionate about academics purely, and those kids are running the world, right? but some kids need something else that that keeps them hooked to the academics. I was one of those kids.
Okay.
And so for me, I did okay academically because, like, my parents were like, "You're not going to play if you don't have decent grades." And so I always knew I had to have decent grades. And so that kind of continued through college. The other good thing about for me, college sports was that as freshmen, you had to do tutoring hours.
Okay.
And so they had an old school time clock, and you had to clock in, I forget what it was, like 4 hours a week of tutoring. And so I had to clock in, which forced you to really lock in. So I was a business administration major coming through, and I did pretty good. So my first semester, because of that tutoring, I mean, my GPA got pretty set, and so I was on track. I wasn't off track. College calculus and college algebra. College algebra, you all know, is like that class, right? For so many kids. And then I had to take college calculus and statistics and all those things. Yep. But we muscled through them.
Okay. And what did you, getting a business degree, that sports may not be the move, or were you trying to, what was the dream job for you at the end of, by the time you were leaving college? What were you like, all right, well, this is what you're in your dream job. Yeah. Yeah, you are trained in communications. I get that. So that's good.
I mean,
I see that.
You like giving me.
No, that's right.
I'm just going to slam dunk that.
That's right. That's right. Multiple sports. That's good. Yeah, that's great. Well, let's play tennis for a second. So going back to, for you though, were you like, okay, I want to be in education? I mean, there's not not a direct line to that.
Yeah, no, it's not. So I don't say I necessarily thought I'd be in education. In fact, just like most children of public servants, you see your parents go through and sacrifice so much. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna make a whole bunch of money doing something else out there. The brief story for me is when I was a junior, I was going into my senior year. So in my junior year in college, the coaches set us up with some summer jobs, and the summer job I got was working at a residential treatment facility with extremely at-risk youth from across the country. And I was working as a residential counselor, and I just fell in love with kids. It was my first real exposure to working with kids with significant challenges, and from some really tough environments and situations. And then I fell in love with kids, so much so that I've said to many folks, like I literally went back to my advisor with probably 16, 18 hours left of college work to finish my business degree, to see about changing my major. Yeah. And the advisor was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, get a master's in that if you want to do that. Yeah. And this is a business person telling you, like, they're just very transactional. No, don't. That's not good business to you.
Right.
I hear you saying that's your passion, but like that's not. Like, you need to finish this. Yeah. And so fortunately, it kind of worked out that way.
When you say at-risk kids, what does that mean for you? When you say that phrase, because it's overused. It's also sometimes.
I think it's probably so. In this particular context, these were students that had multiple diagnoses, and obviously were in these environments because of significant conduct issues in their traditional environments. But candidly had experienced everything from sexual abuse to, many of them had been conceived by, mothers and parents who were drug addicts. Many of them came from extremely, just like the common denominator was there was no kid that experienced during that time that came from what you would call an American dream kind of household. I mean, these kids were just some of the grittiest kids I've ever seen. You know what I mean, from a standpoint of grit. But oftentimes, because of their circumstance and environment, had to apply that grit in a completely different context.
And what do you think your contribution in a room was at that age to be in that room? Was it just your presence? Was it?
I don't know. I don't think of. I don't.
Because you said it had a significant impact on you. So why?
I think it's more their contribution to me than my contribution to them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So for me, you know, it's just probably 20. I think I finished college at 21. This is probably, you know, 19 or 20-year-old, you know, guy that think I'm gonna make millions of dollars doing something else. It like was that, you know, hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So
What did you do after high school, or excuse me, college? What happened after college?
I went to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went to work.
What was your first job?
So actually, the residence facility had a school on site.
Okay.
And so it was about 100-bed facility with a school. Okay. And so I got to go into the classroom and teach.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were you teaching?
So I was teaching middle school.
Okay.
And they were special ed, so we taught multiple subjects, kind of self-contained. So yeah, I got a chance to do that.
How long were you teaching for?
So I taught in total for 5 or 6 years. I did 2 years there, and then 3 years in the public school system, and then 5 or 6.
What made you move to the public school system, like after being there for 2 years? What was the switch?
Yeah, so I got married, and I wanted.
And you met your wife in college.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And so and then I wanted to coach sports as well. So I was coaching. I was coaching at one of the local high schools. The facility was about 45 minutes away from the high school, and so you know they were working with me to come to practice late, and we do defense the second part of practice.
Yeah.
But my wife, you know, my stepdaughter at the time was, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 years old, however old she was, and just the juggling of being 45 minutes away, hopping to practice, trying to help out, you know, so it just made sense for me to make the transition to the school district.
Yeah. How'd you and your wife meet?
You know, man, I saw her.
Yeah. Yeah.
My heart.
I saw you just go back to that moment. That's good. So I'm gonna let you just sit with that. That's good. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You're recording this, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Cut all the rest out. And just
Yeah. That's right.
No, but seriously, so I was at it's funny, I was at a basketball game, and she was sitting, you know, a few stands behind, a few, you know, bleachers up behind me, over kind of to the left, and I was like, man, that's a pretty lady, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't have the courage in that moment, game going on, like I was like, you know, whatever. But if I thought to my mind, if I see her again on campus, I'm gonna find some courage.
Right.
And lo and behold, about a week later, I saw her on campus, and I'd never seen her before. I've been on campus for 4 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I introduced myself, had a buddy with me, and he actually had somebody in the class, so we got connected. So
Okay.
that's good.
Have you all been back to campus together?
Yeah. You know, yeah. I mean, we lived in Clarksville for 15, 16 years, so yeah, we've been back to campus together.
What after being in the public school system, what conversations were you having with yourself about what your career looks like? You're in the public school system. Did you see yourself as just, you know, and not that that's a bad thing, but like, you know, to be a teacher for the rest of your life? Yeah. No, I have no problem. I come from educators, so so for
I was perfectly fine. Like the opportunities I've had, I'll be abundantly clear, and even to be sitting in this moment, like you know, it's I've been very blessed and very fortunate to have some of the experiences and exposures that I've had. That prepare me to excel in this season of work. But I didn't anticipate, you know, the pace in which some of the things would transpire for me, right? Like I had anticipation. I'd do a traditional, very traditional kind of route where I'd have, you know, 6, 7, 8 years in the classrooms, 6, 7 years as an assistant principal, you know, 6, 7 years as a principal, you know, and then maybe they'll call me to the district office at some point, and I'll, you know, retire as a professional learning director or something,
yeah.
You know. And so, so many folks saw things in me and gave me opportunities and pushed me to do things.
What was the biggest break for you? Like the moment where you were like, I think I want to be a superintendent. I think I want to run a school system.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I've never, and I can even say it, like I've never like, it sounds bad, but it's just the truth. Like I've never aspired to do like, I want that job. Like that's not been my motivation coming through. So I was very comfortable in the classroom. I did make a decision. I was like, okay, I think I want to do an assistant principalship. But when I went and did the assistant principalship, my stepdaughter was in the maybe first or second grade, and we moved her to the feeder elementary school there because it was a 3-school campus, elementary, middle, and high, thinking she'd finish out elementary there.
Yep.
Well, in 2 years, the secondary director came by one day and was like, "There's a principalship coming open, and I want you to apply."
Okay.
And so, we moved her one more time, thinking, okay, we're going to move her to the feeder school, and she'll go to middle school at this spot. She'll get to come through the high school I'm serving, and then, she came and tapped me again, and was like, we're looking, and so. I think that again, there's been so many. I've been fortunate to be around so many tremendous leaders that have poured into me.
What was your first stint as a superintendent? How did you get there?
Well, you say first like I've had 10.
Yeah. Sorry, that's the Atlanta in me. We've had 10. Sorry.
That's y'all's history. Don't project that on me.
Yeah.
And let me say this philosophically, right? So I've had the privilege of being in to serve as a corporate executive. Like and that's a unique. Corporate America is a different world for multiple reasons, right? There's some niceties in corporate America too, right? I'd never been on a private plane, and that's the only way we flew. And so it's like, this is different. And so, I'm used to going through line and getting the rental car and having to fight with the rental desk person. Like when that rental car's at the tarmac, it's like, holy cow, this is different.
Yeah.
This is what that's like. I didn't know that, but I think. What was your original question? I went down the road.
Well, now I have other questions about your. Okay. I want to know about your rental plane. I want to know about if you still have access to it.
Like if they cut that off.
Let's actually. I mean, there's clearly an important step in there. Is that you went corporate, right?
Yeah.
What drove you to say I'm going corporate? Why that?
I think it's an important step. So I think for me, a couple of things. But one in particular, we had navigate the pandemic. So here's what I was going to say. Only in public education do we think it's most appropriate to consistently pivot the senior most leader of the organization. And it happens everywhere across the country, right? Like there is a consistent pivot and I can say this because I'm not beholden to the seat. There is a overly political way in which we operate with the senior most leader in public education. And that's not isolated to Atlanta, that's across the country. You can pick up your newspaper and look at public education, look in Chicago right now, what's going on, right? And I know Pedro, you know what I mean? Like the reality is we struggle to create consistency throughout, because here's what inevitably happens, and I'm gonna answer your question. Yeah. You have to remind me what it was. So.
Yeah.
But here's what inevitably happens. Unfortunately or fortunately, like every leader, most people that are fortunate to rise to the top don't necessarily build on what the last leader done, because so many leaders enter the seat with such a mindset or persona that everything that the other person did was wrong. You know what I mean? Like none of that stuff makes any sense. And so you're in this constant churn and grind. Was I born?
Yeah.
Have a good day. I'm just messing with you. There's this constant churn and grind of strategy and pivot, and so leaders have whiplash, and teachers have whiplash, and ultimately, who gets the most whiplash? Students get whiplash. So only in public education do we do that.
So how does that lead you to corporate?
Yeah, so for me, a couple of things transpired. We'd obviously navigate the pandemic. I was in a good spot as superintendent of the district, But
And how long were you superintendent?
4.5 years.
Okay.
Had a, no controversy or any of those kind of things. Nobody running me out with a pitchfork. There were people that were upset that we went to school, during the pandemic, and then there were people that were upset even when we went to school that we had students in masks, and then you had the whole other end of the equation that was upset. So we navigated all that. And I had a young son, right? I have a still fairly young son, and really, I think what the pandemic did to everybody is made them reevaluate what was most important, and what was important to me in that season. It's still important to me. Was making sure that I really poured into him and poured into my family, to be really honest, and we had reflected and prayed about it, and wasn't jumping to other opportunities. I wasn't necessarily looking for another superintendency at all, because I know
Were you coming up on a contract,
No, I had
or
a
were
brand
you?
new contract.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
brand new
yeah.
contract,
Yeah.
brand new, like within 6 months of a 4 year. And in Tennessee, they do 4-year contracts is the max, and so I had a brand new 4-year contract.
Yep.
That I was about 6 months into, and I had a great relationship with my board. My board understands and understood. They still text and call me on a fairly regular cadence, and so. And the superintendent that's there now was my chief operating officer. So what I always want to do is make sure that I, one, leave a district better than it was before I came, or any situation that I'm in. But two, I think a hallmark of great leadership is how many leaders do you really develop, and how prepared do you ensure the organization is for your transition.
Sure. Day
one, when you walk into an organization, you should be preparing it for your departure. And so everything I do right now is about, not everything, we've got a lot of work to do, but a lot of what I do right now is trying to ensure that our leaders are ready, right?
Yeah.
And pushing them to the next. So I had a chance to spend a lot of time with my son, which I really valued, and kind of got into corporate America in a very unique way. CEO of a very, very large trucking company approached me about, coming aboard, and I was like, man, I'm trucking, like, first off, y'all don't make any money, like, at all, you know what I mean? It's a trucker, like, what am I doing, and then I'm a school person, and I had been, praying and, just kind of reflecting on what was next for my family and I, and for my time with my son, because my dad, tremendous father, but he worked second shift, and he was a pastor, and so didn't get the privilege of spending as much time. I remember through my whole high school career, didn't get to come to a lot of ball games, and that's not like he did what he had to do to provide and support our family. I didn't want to necessarily be fully caught in that, and I felt myself like fully caught in that, and so. So
being a CEO gave you more time than.
No.
Okay.
So I didn't go in as CEO. So I went to corporate as I went in as chief of staff and became chief transformation officer. So
got it.
Yeah. So, but private is just different in this particular sector. Like when the day ended at 5, it generally ended at 5.
Got it. And you were able to spend time at home.
Yeah.
And so, when did Atlanta come calling for you? And was Atlanta on your radar before that? I'm getting all into Atlanta calling for me. That's it. I think Atlanta is it is a destination district for, the way I look at, when I left private, so we were acquired, and we're a publicly traded company that was acquired, which is a good thing. Had opportunities had an opportunity to go into higher ed as the chancellor of the university, and I had a relationship from superintendency, and he had been approaching me about things, so I'd spent some time doing that. Which again, like, all this stuff is happening, and I'm not understanding, like, what's next? And I thought, well, I'll be there for a while, and then when Atlanta, came open initially, I did not, really consider it, because again, we're very, very comfortable in our situation. And so, when I think about Atlanta, what drew me to it, like, it's a destination place. It's a place I can see, finishing the raising of my son, which is really important to me. When I had a conversation with my wife, who is absolutely the boss, she was open to it. So my wife is the CEO of the Urban League of Greater Chattanooga, and so, she's transitioning out of that role, is transitioning out of that role, and trying to make sure they find a replacement there. And so, it made sense for our family. Who told you about this position, or how did you find out about the superintendency? Was that something that you were just scrolling through LinkedIn at 2 a.m., or was there or did someone call you and say?
I think the search firm did their job.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So, the search firm did their job.
Okay, so a search firm called you.
Yeah. So the board hired a search firm.
Yeah.
And so they did their job.
Okay, and so what do you mean when they did their job?
They reached out to candidates.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I understand that. That would be part of their job. But
That's what I mean.
right.
That's what I mean.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
they
Well,
reached out.
mechanically, yes. A search firm searched.
Yeah.
Yes. So but like, what specifically do you think when they approached you and they had this conversation with you? What was it that was compelling to you? Were you already like, yes, I'm ready? Like, what was compelling about the gig?
Like, yeah, I'm ready. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so
and I think that's a good thing. I think some people look at it and say, "Oh my God," you know what I mean? Like, somebody just jump in. That's not where I was. Which I think is advantageous. Like it's good to be a nigger beaver in some circumstances. I think if you don't have context and understand the gravity of these assignments, in particular coming to a place like Atlanta, you probably are getting the wrong person. And so initially when they called, I mean, y'all crazy, like I'm just being honest, like, hey, man, y'all cut some of this stuff.
Yeah.
No, I really don't care. I was like, no, I don't think so. I appreciate, like, it's flattering, it's awesome. Y'all reach out, man. I was like, y'all know I'm on the shelf, like I'm done. And so, they hit me with we're gonna send you the profile. Just take a look at the profile. If you're not interested, no sweat, no problem. And so I let that profile sit in I should never open that thing. But I let that profile sit in my inbox for a few days, and we were on some kind of break, and I opened it, and I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, this does sound like me a little bit, and then I started reading through some of the community feedback and stakeholder feedback, and so I talked to my wife, and I was like, so what do you think? And she was like, well, what do you want to do, honey? And I was like, I don't know, and so we kind of went back and forth and decided to kind of pursue it.
How long was the process for you?
Well, Georgia's got an elongated process because you've got the vetting period. Which
there was a whole thing. Look, we don't get the other side of this conversation. As residents, we get we'll let you know when it's like Comcast. We'll be there between 10 and 10, right? And you're like, your superintendent will arrive somewhere between January and December, and we're like, got you, understood. So it was like, okay, well, we'll extend the current one. Let's figure out the whatever it might be. We genuinely had no idea you were
so
even on the radar.
Months, as they did their kind of second wave of resetting, recalibrate, whatever. That's when I came through.
Were you approached after the resetting and calibrating, or were you part of the process and you knew they had to reset and calibrate?
No, I wasn't a part of the initial process.
Okay, so there was something else happened, some other process, and then they opened it back up, or what happened there?
I don't know. Like, I don't know all the details of what the front half looks like. What I know is from the time it was still open, I guess, or reopened, and the search firm was still searching.
So there was a closing and then a reopening.
Yeah, my understanding is that there was an initial, they kind of went, then they had to pause.
Okay.
And then I became engaged post the pause.
And then, and you said it took a couple months while you were in that process?
2 or 3 months. I mean, it feels like forever.
Okay.
But it was probably.
And who did you talk to through the process while you were
search
there?
Firm.
Aside from the search firm, they must have had you speak to other folks, right? Or was it just search firm made the decision?
Pretty clear about. No, it wasn't search firm. I mean, I engaged with the board.
Okay, so you engaged with the school board, the search firm.
As part of the process.
Got it.
Yes.
But there was a community board as well,
there was a
right?
community panel that was identified by the board. There were some folks. Here, Kim Dukes. I don't think anybody else was on it, but there were several folks that they had as a part of the community panel. That was a part of the process.
Got it. And so you're in the role. You got the job. So that's you know that spoiler. Spoiler alert, right? You got the job. It's a interesting time to be in Atlanta talking about education, and particularly because we have had you know the history, right? Like you have had to have known the history. You've done your homework, presumably. It is very uncomfortable for this city to constantly have a shift in leadership. You're the fourth superintendent we've had in a decade, right? And so you said, you enter a job making sure that it's prepared to exist without you, right?
Yeah.
Are you prepared already for APS to exist without you? Is that what are you putting in place to make it, or do you think you need to be here a while to clean up what's going on? Is there a cleanup necessary right now, or are you just the next person in line?
I would call it. Also, yeah, there's some opportunity. So here's let me be clear about where I come from. So I moved here. When I come to a place, I come to a place, right? And it was important for my family and I to, if we were going to move, like we were going to move. Everybody's going to be in this, and we're going to move, and so we've moved to Atlanta, right? And my hope and aspiration is that I'm superintendent of schools, a few years from now, when my son's walking across the stage and can shake his hand as a part of the process. I'm gonna shake his hand and then kick him in the rear and say, "Get on out of the house." But
my sister has to move in.
So she'll already be there. She'll probably be kicking him with me.
Right.
He loves my sister being here.
I bet.
Coming through, by the way, because like every time she comes through, it's like a new pair of sneakers. And he's got her like wrapped around. She has no kids, and it's fun for him.
There you go.
So yeah, I mean, our hope is to be here for a long time.
But when you took this job, right? It is help us as a number of folks working tangential to the education system, internally in the education system. There is trust is at a very low point with our education leadership here, because I've seen time and time again, person comes in, says, "I'm so excited to be here. There's a lot of opportunity. We're all in," and then within a matter of just a couple years, we see either there's a tension point or something else has happened. And it feels like a betrayal of the promises that were made. What for you, when you look at the history of superintendents that have been in Atlanta, what position are you entering in? Are you having to repair things that are broken, or are you building upon a lot of success that has already existed?
Well, I'll go back to something I said earlier. I think every time leadership changes, things change. And what I observe is I'm observing the byproduct of 4 superintendents in 10 years.
Yeah.
Like what I see in my first 46 or 7 days is there are a lot of stops and starts of things. And so you have a lot of fragmentation.
Can you give me an example of something that stopped and started that should have continued?
Well, I can't say what it should have continued because I wasn't necessarily here then, but I can give you examples across the district in everything from teaching and learning and curricular adoptions and what teachers actually have at their fingertips to deliver to students. Right, you have a start of something. A new superintendent comes in and like that doesn't work, and they stop it, and then they start something else. The next superintendent comes in and that doesn't work, and you stop it, and it takes teachers a couple years to get really acclimated to what you're implementing, regardless, right? And so there's this constant churn of reacclimating to something new. So that's on the teaching and learning front. I mean, I can tell you operationally in this district, you can tell there are a lot of stops and starts, right? The enrollment of the traditional Atlanta public schools has been on a decline for the last 15 years. That's just the reality. And that should warrant some operational pivot. And you don't necessarily see the operational pivot. In fact, you see the inverse. When you look at the last 2022, 2023, 2024, the central office grew by over 45%. Doesn't make sense when your enrollment's on a decline. And so I can go wherever you want to go in that, but you can tell it's pervasive throughout the district. The unique thing for me, I'll just be really honest, is again, when I talk about being fully prepared for this moment, is that, I'm a traditional school person, I understand teaching and learning deeply, but having the privilege of being in, corporate America for a period of time, and also having a privilege of working in higher ed and seeing kind of that end result and goal, kind of put all those things together as I,
Well, I think to Atlanta, you're not necessarily very traditional, right? Like, I think that number one, like you're not from here, right? There's like that's number one. Like, your relationship or connection to Atlanta is different. Now, that for some people, that's refreshing. Like, it's like, okay, well, we don't have to have that conversation of what high school did you go to, or what college did you go to over here? So there's that possibility, but at the same time, there is a question of whether there's a understanding of the history that has happened here. The second is that you are bringing more of that corporate perspective to the table, and so the question is, and maybe we just talk about like the budget of the city, or excuse me, the budget of the school board and the school system. You're going to have to help this board make a lot of decisions on where to prioritize and where to cut. All indicators show that we're probably headed for a massive budget shortfall in the next few years. So
this year,
this year, yeah. I mean, over the $100 million, right?
$103 million.
Yeah, $100 million of shortfall that is happening. So that's not a theoretical conversation, right? There's a real problem, because the indication of that is that something is going to have to get cut, or we're going to have to raise revenue from a place that we're currently not raising revenue from. What's your approach to something like a budget shortfall? If the choice is that you have to cut, where would you cut from initially?
It's too early to answer that question, but
how? How's that? I mean, you talked about. I mean, you've done an analysis and evaluation of where there's.
So a couple of things, right?
Yeah.
We'll start at the district office.
Okay.
We want to start as far away from the classroom as possible.
Okay.
If you're asking me what explicitly is going to get cut out to get to $103 million, you got to cut pretty broadly, right? I don't think it was I know it wasn't talked about before I got here, so I appreciate the question, but I've raised the point in the last 47 days. I wasn't aware of the interview process that there was a $100 million shortfall. It wasn't something that was regularly.
That wasn't on page 3 of the. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
It wasn't a part of the profile.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
And so, it just is, right? And look, here's the other data point. Like, if we want to get into data, by 2030, if we don't make a change, it's going to be over $250 million.
Right. Yeah.
And so we know we have to make those pivots, and that's a part of the work that we're doing right now.
And there's a short runway, though, right? I mean, but budget season is budget season is going to start soon.
There's some nuance, right?
Yeah.
I think you have to understand that it is absolutely a fiscal crisis, an opportunity to lean in. But Atlanta Public Schools is also in a unique spot, because it's got the potential of being an extremely strong financial, city. Like, it's fully poised to do that. Very few places there was roughly $75 million of fund balance used last year to balance the budget. Very few places have that kind of capital and still are running at a very strong, run rate from a fund balance standpoint. So we know we've got to right size the district, and it's going to be something that we've got to look at thoughtfully. How
do you balance right sizing a budget, which is a full-time gig, right? This is not a small budget. Like, this is not a tiny budget. It's bigger than the city of Atlanta's operating budget. Mm-hmm. This is a large budget that has a lot of history to it, that you can't just come in and say, well, I'm cutting that and I'm cutting that. That's that's part of the challenge.
What was I cutting?
Well, because I wanted to know whether, based on your analysis of the budget, where there is potentially excess or surplus spending that is happening. I presumed you've done that analysis.
To an extent, we'll start with.
Because you've sat with the CFO, they presented publicly what has happened around raises, what that has done to the potential budget.
It's tough to cut raises, right?
Not saying to cut raises. What I'm saying is when you put raises in place, the budget goes up.
Absolutely.
So if a budget is up, you can imagine the people who got raises are looking at this system that said everybody gets a bonus, everybody gets more money. The first thing that usually happens when people are making cuts is we lose our people. And so there is a concern that we are going to lose a lot of people, or a lot of people who were promised this temporary cut or a raise are now going to be out of a job next year.
I think right sizing touches everything.
Okay. It does, but you're going to have to prioritize, right?
Yeah, but right sizing still will touch everything. We're going to prioritize, and I think the reality is we'll start. The number one focus is to let's back up. The number one focus is to improve student achievement.
Okay.
So the complexity of this issue is you want to move student achievement forward.
Yes.
While still dealing with these real challenges that exist operationally. So I'm a former principal teacher, you know what I mean? And so I understand, if I'm a principal in a very small school right now, right, I'm hearing a little bit of this noise and it's distracting. And so I've got a conversation, I have those principals like, focus on your work. You know what I'm saying? Don't listen. So it's balancing all that creates some complexity, but exactly what's going to get cut. Like you start with the lowest hanging fruit. And there's some immediate things that you do, like, hey, look, we're freezing all, future forward travel. We're pausing, future district hirings. Anything that's a manager and up will have to come through an approval process. We're having very transparent conversations with school leaders. We're having very transparent conversations with the community. Every time we get a chance to go out and saying, hey, there's this budget shortfall. And I've been shocked at how many people say, what? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a $103 million budget shortfall. And that's the number today, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, we'll get there though. I don't have this pessimistic view of it. And it is absolutely like, wow, how do we get here at the same time? It's like, we'll get there.
Well, it often feels like operation barriers get in the way of us being able to have the conversation about the actual work of the school system, which is and that is if you look at the history of the conversations we have around the school system, it often feels like there are these massive operations issues. And then maybe we'll sprinkle a little bit of conversation on literacy if we have the time and ability to address it, but we can't even get to it because we're dealing with these operational issues.
I've been the converse.
Yeah.
So I spend the bulk of my day not in operational conversations. Mm-hmm. I spend the bulk of my day in teaching and learning. It's where the work happens, right?
Where do we need to be spending or investing more dollars? Where do you think that we have maybe based on your initial analysis of the budget, where have we not spent enough?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I have a question around. I won't tell you just unequivocally, but what I have a great question around. I don't know that I have. So let me even caveat that. I don't know that I have. I don't know that I have a ton of question around the amount of money that's been spent anywhere. If I'm being honest, there's one area that I have question around, the CTAE, and I'll come back to that. I don't know that I have a great deal of question around the amount of money that's been spent anywhere. I do have great question about the quality, fidelity, intensity, and consistency of the things that have been implemented. And so what I have question about is, again, when you got 4 leaders in 10 years, you've got these consistent pivots. And so you're throwing, $6 million to adopt this resource and then box it all up and send it back to the vendor because the next person doesn't like it. And then you go spend another $4 million on something different. And the frame is, well, it's much cheaper than the $6 million that we spent 2 years ago. Yeah. But the challenge is you're going to have to spend, you're going to spend all that and some because you got to coach the people up to use whatever you got. Oh, then by the way, a new super comes in 2 or 3 years, box that up and send that on and let's go spend. I'm getting you a deal. It's not 4 million this time, it's 3.5. You know
Sure.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so you've got this, I don't have a question about the amount of money you spend anywhere, right? It's really more about, i.e. literacy, right? I have a question about like, how things are being implemented, how things are being followed through.
What data is most important to you as you're measuring success? Because it's not going to be dollars spent, dollars gained necessarily, but what specific data? I think data has been used, especially in the education system, to sometimes even mask things like the fact that we have a $103 million shortfall, or to tell us everything is going great. And then all of a sudden, until there's a superintendent recruitment process, then we find out, wait a second, everything wasn't going great. So there's a lot of confusion on how data and information has been presented to the public. What information is most important to you, and how do you plan to share that with the public so they can evaluate success with you?
Yes. So what the board will do is they'll have goals that so 2 things. They already have goals around literacy, numeracy, college and career, and so those goals will be modified and adjusted a little bit just based on the numbers and where we want to go over the next several years. And those will continue to be the anchors, right? How students are improving in literacy, how students are improving in math. I think graduation rate is important because it's a gate, but I don't see it as a really as critical an indicator as it may have been many years ago. I think the more important indicator is around preparedness and how many students have. And so this gets to my CTAE point. I think dual enrollment, dual credit, certification, credentialing. I was meeting with the CTAE director yesterday, and I was asking her about specifically 3 schools that we have that are under enrolled. When we look at the numbers and how robust are they, let me call them out so I'm doing my homework. South Atlanta, Douglas, let me get it right. South Atlanta, Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're going to tell you called it Doug, and they're going to tell you, no, we're Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington. Right? So get it right. And so those are 3 schools that we know enrollments, not necessarily one, but also at the same time, I have a great question around just holistically looking at CTAE, and okay, at Midtown you can't put anything else in, North Atlanta you can't put because you don't have space. Like, what are we doing here? Because we only have these 4 offerings, right? So my charge to her was, because I'm also trying to see what people are capable of doing.
Yeah, right.
My charge to her was, you're back on my calendar in 2 weeks, and I want to see what your vision is. Because in 2 weeks, if you can't present me a vision, you can't lead to. I'm getting in trouble. Let me back up. But I've given her 2 weeks to come up with a plan.
2 more things, then I want to open it up.
I think there's opportunity in CTA.
Yeah, got it. So the 2 things, then I want to open up questions. One is I want to talk about the very thing that you were ending on, which is there are schools that are under enrolled. We don't have enough folks in there. You got other schools that are over enrolled, over indexed. There is a conversation about intentionally segregated schools in Atlanta that we need to have, right? There's when we think about the schools that are often most hit with under enrollment, the schools that are most affected by this, it's usually in Black neighborhoods and Black communities, and they're the ones who are having to make the question of why is it that the school that I'm in is not able to operate at the same and have the same amount of resources as a school that may be over here, or recruit the same way. How do you talk to folks who feel that this is intentional design, not just happenstance or circumstantial, but that this is exactly how the school system is designed to be? There is a feeling that it's not like we haven't had other superintendents talk about this, say that they are going to fix it and address it, but the problem just seems to be getting worse.
Yeah. So number one, here's the promise I'll make to this community. I'll make the promise that, because I understand that so I should give this context. First community meeting I had during the vetting period is when I really knew I wanted to come here and serve. Because what I could tell in our first meeting, I think maybe the second, or first or second was at Carver. And I could tell this complete distrust with regard to I won't say complete, that may be too strong, right? And let me caveat that. I think Dr. Battle, known, newer work, you know what I mean? So was in a unique spot to be able to do it. But I could tell this level of distrust with the role of the superintendent and the district for that matter, right? And so much of my responsibility is to be really honest and open and hopefully heal, so to speak, be a part of the healing process of the community in regards to the trust and belief that you have in the school district. So I'm not going around here saying, well, you know, we're going to improve student scores by 50 points. Like I'm lying to you. I'm going to tell you, here's what we're doing. Here's what our goal is. You know, we want to move by 5, 7, whatever the number is. Then I'm going to be very clear with you. Crap, we didn't meet it. And then here's what we're doing to pivot. Or we met it and exceeded it. We really got the number wrong. Now we're trying to go get this. And so I think that open dialogue and really transparency is important for whomever's, you know, in these seats that gets the opportunity to serve.
I think that this is to my last question is, I think that has been the pattern, right? Which is there's this initial engagement, an acknowledgement of past harm and need for repair, a commitment to open, honest, transparent communication, and also that we're going to address these things head on. And then what usually happens is 1 year passes, everything is all good, and then politics starts to get in the way of this job. And I think that there's the distrust not because people don't have enough information, it's because we've given them and shown them more than what we were saying, which is, and you should believe people when they show you. And so there is this, when I see, or when people see that the school system doesn't seem to be matching its rhetoric, there starts to become a distrust. So my last question on this, as we open it up, is some of that seems to be a contention, not just it's not like superintendents are coming in and then lying. It's actually external forces that often impact the role of the superintendent, i.e. the school board may have different intentions. Every 4 years, we have school board members who view it as a incubator to run for something else, right? So there's like we're not even sure if school board members are gonna stay, first of all. So we don't know what their intent may be. And then because unlike other school districts, Atlanta's school system being separate from the city, it's separate, but it's also not, because we've seen in years past the influence that the city government has on decision making within the city. Maybe not formally, but certainly politically. What are you actively doing, like specifically doing, to prevent that undue influence on your role and your job? Because on one hand, it's very exciting that you come from the corporate side. On the other hand, we have seen corporate Atlanta also interject itself into Atlanta to create the Atlanta way in many ways, and impact what public service is really supposed to be about, all those goals that you mentioned. So I think there's also like a healthy fear and tension of like,
that's a good thing.
Is this going to be yet another promise that's made by someone and it's going to get derailed by an external force? So how do you prevent external political pressures that will inevitably exist, and also distance yourself from corporate pressures that may exist in Atlanta, which is a part of how you do business in the city?
So let me go back and make sure I answer your first question correctly. What we're going to do is really clearly share the data, because I think one thing that has been masked to an extent is when you start to look at the investment that the district is making. The question that I have is what the return on the investment is. That's the conversation I'm having, right? So when you look at our per pupil expenditure, you look across this community, you're going to see that there is a equity component that is in play. But what's actually happening in regards to student outcomes doesn't line up with the investment. So here's what I can commit to, right? Like if, and let me go back to the $103 million deficit. If we had a $103 million deficit and our schools were doing this, I'd be on top of the table saying we got to create more revenue. We got to figure out how to get more revenue, right? Because I know that school's got 170 children, but it's knocking it out of the park. They're moving double-digit gains year. That's not what we've got right now, and so that warrants further dialogue and conversation. In relation to the politics and those kinds of things, like the proof is in the pudding. Like I don't have a silver bullet answer to what you're asking.
I don't need a silver bullet answer. I do need to get a better understanding of what you're. Yeah. All right.
So I've done this job.
Okay.
Before. I'm not new to this job. I come from an environment that was, a little bit about Chattanooga?
Not enough. I know Usher's from there. That's all. Yeah.
That's probably about all you need.
Yeah.
Here's what you should know. 9-member school board, 45,000 student district, 78 campuses. So similar footprint. Here's the difference. The politics were there are external Atlanta politics when you get to but our government politics were tougher than Atlanta's.
Interesting. Why would you say that?
So I had a school board. So let me give you a budget example.
Okay.
If I had a budget, I had to have my school board didn't have fiduciary authority to they approved a budget in name, but it had to go to the county commission to actually get the resource.
Yeah.
One of 7 states in the nation that has that kind of setup, and maybe fewer than that now. And so anytime I had a budget, I had to get school board approval, and then I had to go to Hamilton County government to get approval.
Yeah.
Okay. Hamilton County government was about 80% conservative. The mayor was conservative, and so that presented in particular during the tenure when I was serving, created a very interesting political dynamic. Mm-hmm. Here's the other caveat. The people don't really know Hamilton County, they know a little bit about Chattanooga, right? They knew Usher was from Chattanooga, not Hamilton County. Yeah. The city was not our funding agent. The county was our funding agent. But I had to keep a great relationship with the city mayor as well, right? So I'm used to this kind of 3-headed approach where I'm navigating city official, county officials, school board, right? I couldn't tell the school board, you don't matter because you're not my funding agent, right? Because they're my bosses.
Yeah.
But then the county's my funding agent, but then the city mayor's got the bully pulpit. So, you're kind of navigating this interesting terrain.
Right.
I'm not consumed by politics. I'm not consumed by corporate America. I'm consumed by children. And so I've come here because I want this job, not because it's the next job in a slate of career moves for me.
So you laid out how Chattanooga is set up, but what are you specifically able to do to hold the integrity of your role while also, I mean, those are going to be political pressures when they come up.
Yeah. So
how do we know that you'll be able to press up against those?
I can only give you who I am.
Yeah.
I'm the son of a pastor. My faith is important. My family is important.
Sure.
So that's all I can give you.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to ask me how simple, I have a record of doing that.
Okay.
I have a history of doing that.
Okay.
And look, I've sat in the room with governors and CEOs and all the above, and I'm not enamored by it. Like, I'm not overtaken by what Atlanta is. I'm just extremely grounded, man. Like, at the end of the day, I know who I am, and I know why I'm doing this work. And so I don't come from a place of, I have to do this job really well because it's an assignment that I've been called to versus something that, like, I just want to do. You know what I mean? Because it's next in a career set of mine.
Sure.
This wasn't a part of that.
Yeah.
So it's just a little different.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the question, and I think that time will tell. Right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the politics will come. There will be an opportunity. Yeah, they're here.
Politics are here. Right?
They're here, and I think your role is already so politicized as it is.
Overly.
And I think that is where the question really stems from. I want to get some folks from the audience, and we can definitely wrap. And I appreciate your answer on that. I want to, if you could introduce yourself and then just your question. Want to make sure that we can get as many of those as we can. We got a few online as well, and we'll rock from there. Yes, go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Denisha Thompson-Preston. I'm the Director of Public Engagement and Advocacy at Reading Project in Atlanta. But before this, I taught for 11 years. And so something that was really refreshing at one of your community engagements, you talking about deconstructing standards. So that's super refreshing to see a superintendent having that intense knowledge of student learning.
Intense.
So my question is, with the raise for teachers, which truly deserve, speaking of principals, there has been an influx of educators who are probably excited about teaching, but are also excited about the money, and there's a lack of high quality. So are there initial thoughts in your mind of like how you're going to ensure that the teachers in the school building are highly qualified educators to help close those gaps that we're seeing across the district?
Yeah, there are initial thoughts for sure. Yeah, I think it boils down to kind of bottom line how you're talking. I think when I look at community will ask this question. Let me frame it this way. Community will say, well, 11%. Some people will simplify it and reduce it down to this. We have an 11% increase. We want to see an 11% increase in the score. Like, you can't correlate that. So there's going to, but I'm just saying, like, you know, some people that aren't steeped in it, like, they just are bottom line driven, that you expect if I pay more, I get better. That's the simplest way to articulate. So we're having those conversations. I think, you know, one of the things that's going to be critically important is the support of leaders as they look at hiring processes and who they're actually hiring, because they have a lot of, sure, the person comes through the HR vetting process, but it's that school leadership team that's sitting with that individual and making those decisions. And we need to be really intentional in making sure that those school leaders are looking at and for the right things in regards to the teachers that they're taking, and understanding that, you know, you have begun to pivot to a place where you have much more choice. The pool is, you know, much deeper than maybe it has been in the past. There are educators with experience that are talented, that are coming from other districts. So, you know, maybe your posture had to be at one time, take what, you know, you can get. Now, not as much. And let me say this, I think progressively, as if we can get to a place of right sizing, and right sizing does mean people, and it does mean, you know, facility. Like, I think that's all a part of it. You know, as you look at right sizing, the question I have is, could we not be even more aggressive in our pay, which allows us to become eventually even more aggressive in our selectivity around who's in front of our children? So, yeah.
Yes, Terry.
Hi, Terry Bradley, founding CEO of Brown Toy Box. So first I was going to ask you about the abysmal supply of diversity, but I don't want to talk about that. I'm really most interested in when you think about how the city is gentrifying. I think, from my perspective, APS has been complicit in the discrimination of Black children, right? So anything south of 20, you know, you just see that as white folks move into those communities, those parents are placated by you know, rezoning things. Like, for example, the children in Dunbar being rezoned from Maynard Jackson back to Carver, those kind of things, right? So how do you make sure that those legacy residents, those folks that were there and they built those communities, but now that there's new folks coming in, tech folks, people coming in from LA and all these different places, they want those communities, but they don't want their kids in those same schools. How do you make sure those kids get to stay there and they get those same opportunities that these new folks coming into these communities are going to get?
When you said, I want to make sure I understand your question, are you talking about the people that are moving here get to stay in the zone?
No, we're talking about the
Okay.
Black children that were there,
There.
before the neighborhood gentrified.
Yeah, but are those, so let's go back to your example, are those students being zoned somewhere different now because the new folks are moving in?
Specifically for Grant Park, we'll talk about. I graduated two children from Maynard Jackson High School, so it was probably when we moved there, 70-30 Black versus white. The demographics has certainly changed. Grant Park is a really unaffordable place to live at this point. But there were children that were in the Dunbar community that were zoned for Maynard Jackson.
I got you.
And even though I'm not a parent there anymore, I'm really watching that these kids are being zoned out of Maynard Jackson because it's now, you know, and I think, you know, there's a blueprint to gentrification. They move in, they put their kids in a public charter school until it gets wide enough. and then they put their kids into that public school. And none of that, other things I'm saying are politically correct, but it just is what it is for Atlanta, right? So I want to understand how we make sure those kids in Trestle Tree or in Dunbar get to stay in Maynard Jackson and those schools and those communities as the community, has more resources and all those kind of things.
Yeah. So I again, if y'all want me to come in here today and make a whole bunch of promises about what we unequivocally can and will do, I can't do that. What I can say unequivocally is, it's not the first time I've heard that concern, and that will absolutely be noted. I think the board has that at front of mind, top of mind. When you look at, so here's what we're grappling against, right? You've got Maynard Jackson, which is one of the three schools that are overcrowded, right? And there were things that were in motion before I got here that I'm taking in. I'm like, oh, we did that way. So for instance, this past year, there was a residency review of the kids that were in Maynard Jackson, which, I get it, right? But the truth is, you know what I mean? What the truth is. And so, I'm more interested in taking a broader view of Atlanta, and I'm used to being in an environment where you look at the entire system before you make decisions, and you take into consideration what you're doing or not doing to a school community by making these kind of one-off fragmented shifts of school communities. Unfortunately, when you're in a reactionary posture, you kind of get this. You get this dynamic where, you haven't really thought ahead to look at or you've thought ahead but not implemented. And I think there's been some of that's going on really as well. So I hear that concern. I've heard that concern. There's 47 school days in. And I think that's something that we've got to absolutely look at. And that's all I can do is make that commitment to you. I can't tell you what the plan is. I think it's really, really clear that's a challenge that will exist, in particular in that case.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I am Lisa Roy. I'm a parent and a former educator at APS. My question is something that gets brought up often. So you said that student achievement was number one. How does that apply to special education? As a parent of a student who has special needs, because a lot of their test scores don't matter or don't get taken into consideration, a lot of times student achievement doesn't apply to them. It doesn't go beyond making sure that they have good classroom behavior. And as a parent whose son is autistic, but I do think that academically he can be pushed a lot further, how does that play into your plan? And are you taking parent consideration? Like, are you talking to parents about what they think could be a catapult in having their students thrive, or is it just administration and teachers that are sitting in on these conversations when we're considering how we can have student achievement apply to special education as well?
Yeah. So I take for granted where I am. Again, I recognize that there's a significant amount of opportunity to build relationship in Atlanta public schools with the public school system. I'm a former special educator, always a special educator, certified special educator, certified in the state of Georgia now, special educator. And so I have a hard sensitivity to special education. I think I've shared earlier that my first job was in residential treatment. All those students were certified as something, right? All the students had an identification. A couple things we've done. Let me just speak to what we've done. Number one, I identified pretty early on. So Atlanta Thrive was real involved, and has been real involved, stays really involved with, in particular, the issue around special education. And it's been tremendous. So one of the first things I got to sit in on was a special education audit. That audit brought forth some things that were quite alarming to me, coming from other places. And so that it was good, right? Like, it's good to have that basis to work from. One of the first things we identified as the special education was probably too embedded within the organization. And so it was in academics, but then it reported to student services, and you kind of, and so that voice not being at the table is problematic to me, right? And so we've elevated the lead of special education to assistant superintendency. And that seat is at the senior leadership table because we want that voice at the table as we're making decisions. Additionally, we meet with and have met with multiple groups of parents. So I spoke to our engagement with Now Thrive, but we've also, there were a group of special education parents that kind of pulled themselves together as a group a couple of weeks ago that we met with at the district office. Myself, Dr. Love, who is the interim assistant superintendent of special education, and Erica Long, who's pivoted into a role of student experience, which special education falls in that purview. And we were supposed to meet from 6 to 7, I think about 8:15. I said, hey, we got to a wrap point, and just listen to their concerns, right? And their concerns are, really a microcosm of what's happening more globally across the district. So, our goal is not to make decisions in isolation. There will be things that we have to decide, you know what I mean? But in general, when we get to this, I think it's important to listen, to understand, to know, and to respond. And so what we try to do is to begin our response. I'll give some contextual examples, some of what we're doing already. Like a lot of special education from my background experiences, and I hate to oversimplify it this way, but a lot of it's just customer service, right? We just get to the brass tack, anywhere else you go, if you go make a doctor's appointment, they're going to offer you a time. If that time doesn't work, they're going to offer you a different time. If that time doesn't work, they're going to offer you they're going to offer you a set of times. So they may even give you those choices on the front end. You can come Tuesday at 12, Wednesday at 4, or Thursday at 2. We've been in a posture of telling parents your IEP meeting is Tuesday at 12. Goodbye. And so we already have pivoted that, right? Hey, here go 5 options. Choose which one works for you. We'll make it work, So, we want to be in a posture of serving families, and we understand that's really, really important. And, we'll continue.
This question came in online. A lot of places are taking especially given recent incidences inside of schools, a gun safety pledge and a kind of proposal to ensure that there is a commitment to both gun safety and safe storage. There have been resolutions and other things that have come through just encouraging safety, but this person has indicated that the result has been just more increased policing, detentions, and that is not an effective strategy to address what's going on internally. What is your number one? Would you make a public pledge around?
We have.
Okay, and so and
we'll build on that.
Yeah. So if you could tell me what that pledge really results in beyond words into actual activity inside of the schools that can help parents know that not only will my children be safer, but that the response isn't just going to be over-policing of an already over-policed population.
So I think you got to pull multiple levers. My view is you can't just do one thing in this day and age. You have to do I think you got to do the safe pledge of gun storage. I think you've got to also deal with social emotional. You got to also deal with just downright security, right? You got to really pull all 3 of the levers. So what we're trying to do is pull all 3 of the levers from a safe pledge standpoint. Last week we reminded the community of the board's commitment and our commitment to safe pledge. Our chief of police is actually testifying in front of the Senate committee this week, and specifically about safe pledge. And we're actually having our first meeting with the district safety community tonight, in which one of the things we're going to talk about is what a campaign, if you will, actually looks like that is effective, because we want to make sure that we pull every single lever to address it. It's unfortunate that we're having to have this depth of conversation around safety, security, and I think the well-being conversation we'd be having in general. but it's just where we are, right? And so, we hear folks on that.
So the second part of that question was, how do you make sure that it does not over-rely on purely policing or police-centered strategies? A lot of the examples you just mentioned was the solutions that are going to come from your chief of police or come from those departments. Where else, what are other places where safety can really start?
To be clear, the committee, for instance, is being co-chaired. It's being chaired by student services, which leads, our counseling and all of our social emotional supports, and our chief of police, because both of those things are equal in tandem in regards to trying to address the needs. So
Got it.
it's not a one size fits all. It's like a both and.
Okay.
Right? There are places where we need to have. There are places where we need to have a situation where we need to have more presence of security. There are places where we need to do deeper education of social emotional supports and et cetera.
Got it. Okay. We have time for just a couple more. Yes, go ahead, Carol.
Good morning, Dr. Johnson, and thank you for being here. My name is Carol Bowman. I am the founder and executive director of an organization called Learning in Color, and I also am a former educator of special education for over 20 years. So my question is, to what degree do you believe that the built environment of a school building, the actual aesthetic, has on academic and social emotional learning outcomes? And based on that belief, how does that drive budget decisions around building improvements?
Yeah, I think it matters, right? I think, Georgia's fortunate to have SPLOST, and with that SPLOST you're able to do, hopefully, some strategic things that position you better. I think, let me be clear, the number one thing that impacts student achievement is not a facility, it's a teacher. So from a priority standpoint, and not just a teacher, a highly skilled and trained teacher. So from the order of things that I'm gonna lean into as I come in, it's the quality of leadership at the helm of buildings. Because if we get great leaders at the helm of all the buildings, then you get great teachers. I think in our right sizing conversation, right, you're also able to have more resources to double down and do some other things with facilities that may want to be done. But I think it's important. I've gone in some buildings across and look, I come from places that didn't have SPOS, so we didn't have the ability, like our stuff was buildings here are tremendous in comparison to where I'm just being frank, to where I come from. All of them in comparison. But once you're in a place, you can see the difference. So if I'm in a building and I see something off, I take a picture, literally, and I send that picture to the chief operations officer, and it usually gets good energy. And so we'll continue down that path. I think it's important. It doesn't raise, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm just an honest book. Like, it doesn't raise the number one, but it doesn't raise the number one because I think there are so many more burning things that we got to lean into right now that will make us actually better in that space as you look on down the line.
Jim?
Jim Martin, Chairman of the Neighborhood Planning Committee. Our elected officials at many levels of government seem to think that the best use of APS tax revenue is to make lavish gifts to wealthy developers through things like incentive abatement, tax allocation districts, and systematic underassessments. And I'm wondering where you see your role in dealing with that situation lies. I mean, your predecessor's predecessor took a fairly active role, and the predecessor much less so.
Yeah, I like y'all, like I want to be clear about what my job is. My job is to improve student achievement. I'm not a real estate developer. I understand that Atlanta Public Schools is one of the largest, if not the largest, landowner right in Atlanta. And so as a result of that, right, there are real estate components and conversations. But my job is to improve student outcomes. And that's my focus, right? Like, I'm not getting into that, you know what I mean? I think oftentimes when you spend an inordinate amount of time in that kind of stuff, That's how your earlier political conversation comes into the like I'm itching right now to get gone from here because I love y'all, but my job, unapologetic. I'm so sure on what my job is, y'all. I'm so deeply convicted around it. So they ain't on the radar. Just to be honest, I'm not going to spend a lot of time and energy in tax breaking and all that. I don't have time for that. The work of moving this system forward from a student achievement standpoint is so significant right now. When you've got less than 1 in 5 Black and brown students that are reading at grade level, and let me give you another data point. When we graduate more than 80% of our students, but the correlating number or correlating percentage from the standpoint of students that know what they're graduating to and actually going to do post-graduation doesn't align. Like I got too much work to be doing. You know what I mean? And so that's where I'm spending a lot of my time and energy. And here's what's happened to the people in this seat. They've been consumed by the noise. There's a lot of external stuff that can consume my day. You know, there's a lot of breakfasts and lunches and events that can consume, and meetings with developers, because every developer wants me. You know what I mean? Like that stuff can consume your day. I've visited, and not just visited, I've been in classrooms in every traditional school in this district. I've been to every partner school in this district, and I'll get to every charter school in this district. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna turn around and start making my second set of visits to traditional campuses here. And the second set will be different because it will be even less announced and it will be even more intentional and focused, because the work is to improve student achievement. Give me an F for real estate development and give me an A for improving student achievement, and send me home for the F in real estate development, and I will leave proudly having improved outcomes for children. So I'm just so clear and convicted because I've done this job before and I'm grounded.
Yeah. So to close out, thank you. I want to, aside from being a Saints fan, I'm going to use deductive reasoning.
No,
here.
I'm a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, I figured as
I'm
much.
a Cowboys fan.
Yeah. See, I knew I'd get it out eventually.
That's a
good Monday.
I'm unapologetic about it.
No, that's what's up. Dak had a good throw. It was a good throw on.
It was a
good game. It was a good game.
We've crawled out of a hole.
That's right. So ultimately, this group of people, regardless of the differences in opinion, thought, whatever it might be, it is in everyone's best interest for you to succeed. Everybody here should be invested in your success, which can come. Atlanta shows love in different ways. Sometimes it is direct words. Sometimes it is through critique, pressure, some good trouble. A lot of folks in this room may want to know, and you're just getting started in this job, how can people best support or pour into you as you're learning on this job? You're 40-something days in. What do you ask from, there's a lot of organizational leaders here, there's community leaders here in this room. What is something that you feel you don't know yet or that you need from this community of people where we can help support your success?
Yeah, I think the thing I would say to that, I don't know that there's so many different groups representing so many different organizations. I don't want to give you a silver bullet thing. I do have an ask. As you are hearing of what some of the challenge is, I would ask you to share what that challenge is. So I appreciate the fact that we started something. We're $100 million in the red, right? I think the more you can know what the challenges are and be aware of what they are. Hopefully, here in the next week or so, we're going to open up launch a page that's we're calling it Open APS, but in effect we're going to put the important create more transparency and more clarity to that transparency around the things that are really decision points, I think, for this school district, and kind of some of the data and information that we're taking in and trying to get to that decision point. And I think as you take that information in, my challenge and charge will be to share it, right? Like this $100 million deficit didn't start overnight, right? This feeling of, not just the gentrification, but, the decision making around that gentrification isn't something that started. I told the board last night, and I meant it unapologetically, like it was a heavy meeting because we were dealing with budget and facilities. And at some point I just said, hold on, guys, these problems didn't start 46 days ago. You know what I'm saying? These are issues that Atlanta has had for a while. This has been years in the making. And now we're at the moment. And so either we meet the moment collectively with the data to try to make the decision and take all the different, ideas and thoughts into play, or we don't, right? And so my hope is that we do, and I fully anticipate we will. So my challenge and charge will be only to share the fact, and if you don't have the fact, obviously Open APS will be a place to go, but we want to be a resource as well. I've said this, I've almost got myself in trouble. Atlanta projects big because it's a big city, right? But the school district is not that big, right? I'm just being honest. It's really not. And so I'm manageable, I'm reachable, and I'm direct. And so if you're reaching me to sell me something, I'm just gonna be honest. I'm trying to get rid of some of the stuff we got. I'm just being honest. If you're reaching me to try to figure out how we can work together to improve student achievement, right, and improve outcomes for kids, I'm always open to that conversation. And so, let's lean in together. What I sense across this community is this distrust, and we want to hopefully help heal some of that and support every learner. And so, this work is important to us. Again, it's not my career is made, man. So I'm entering this seat from a different spot. Like I'm in a different season of life, right? Where I want to do this job. And I'm excited about the opportunity to make a difference. And we hope to be here for a while. But if they tell me I gotta go tomorrow, we're gonna be all right.
You were already ready. Yeah, that's right. Yes. Thank you for your honesty, your candor. Again, for everyone else in this room, these positions do not succeed on its own. There's no question in my mind Atlanta is one of those places where doing public service and being offered a private jet are actually sometimes the same job. And so there will be, I'm not saying that's going to happen, that you're going to take it, but I'm just saying that at the end of the day, we know that sometimes it's not even the superintendent who's in the driver's seat of some of this decision making. So our job is not only to hold the office accountable, but also root for its success. So I want to genuinely just say that is what this conversation is rooted in. There is an election happening in October. There is in November. Well, it's happening October 15th. For me, it's on the 15th. I don't know what it is for y'all, but on the 15th, this election starts. So there's that, but yes, November 5th otherwise. And then next year, half of the school board is up for election in addition to city council and potentially the mayor's office. So want to just keep you engaged and involved. You can follow along, civicatlanta.org. Can y'all give me Dr. Bryan Johnson a big round of applause? Cool. All right. Thank you for being here this morning. We appreciate it. Yep.